Here we go. How's it going, folks? My name's Eric Miller. I'm with Ravers for Recovery. Troy is out tonight, having to do the JOB. I have here with me Rob Siesmasko, aka Indigo Child. How's you doing, Rob? Rob is you currently in Indiana now, or are you back in Louisville? You're in Indy.
I'm in Indy.
Back in Indy. All right. So Rob and I met a long time ago on the famous coke lot of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on a night that will live in infamy. It's just that was the first time you and I met, I believe. So
You were running security for us, making sure everything stayed in control and safe.
I don't know how much control that was, man. It was definitely it was a tent. A pop-up. It was a pop-up with a piece of security tape, and we went from So anyhow, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Rob, go ahead and tell everyone about yourself and who you are, where you're from, what you do, what you're about.
Nice. So my name's Rob Siesmasko. I'm 30 years old. I'm a DJ and a producer. I go by Indigo Child. I'm based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. As far as recovery and addiction, I've struggled with, opiate abuse. I'm coming up on like 8 or 9 years now.
Nice.
8 years. So that was the first habit that I really quit, and I struggled with that for a good couple years. And then I had 2 years clean. I relapsed, and after that, I had a one relapse and overdosed, and that was the last time I touched it. Enough was enough, and so I never went back. But one thing that I did struggle with for a long time afterwards was alcohol use, especially being a DJ and involved in a scene that kind of normalizes drinking to an extreme extent. I wasn't able to leave the party at the party, and
right.
And especially I would go certain periods of time where I would go without drinking, but then the disease tells you that you've got it beat and that you're okay, and then I'd start out maybe one drink here or there, yada yada yada, and then one night I would get too drunk, and then I would wake up and I would go back to drinking, start to finish. That would be my day. I'd have to wake up and go to the gas station, get a 40 just to get out of bed and function.
Right.
So, I was a full-blown alcoholic. And last time I really struggled with it, I was on about a 3-4 month bender. A couple friends of ours had quit right before I decided to, and it was something that I didn't want to go through anymore. It was I went through literally every rock bottom in one day. Ended up in the hospital, lost my job, all within the same day, and then I was done. Alcohol was something that was no longer serving a positive purpose in my life, and my life had legitimately become unmanageable.
Right.
So I'm very blessed and lucky that I had a lot of people in my corner that I had met through the music scene. My buddy Duncan, Ramsey, all those guys. Matt had quit, and Duncan wasn't drinking around me because he had seen me at some of my worst, and so he refrained from drinking for about 6 months or longer. I mean, he hasn't even now he just doesn't drink, So it was rough at first. You go through the physical stuff, and then you deal with the psychological aspects of withdrawals and addiction, and something like that is one of the hardest things I've ever had to quit, but I think being surrounded by good positive influences, supportive people, I mean, I never felt out of place. I never felt peer pressure. When I said I wanted to quit and people knew that, they didn't offer me booze. I kept playing shows, but I traveled with people who stayed sober, and who didn't drink, and people that did, they didn't necessarily put it in my face. They respected that. So it really helped it helped me stay involved and active with the music, and at the same time, it helped me with my recovery. You know, so I was definitely very blessed the last time that I was surrounded by those types of people.
Right on. Now I know you have a wonderful wife, Crystal, and you have three now. Three babies now. Yeah, and Robbie growing up and all that stuff. How did that affect your home life, and how was the support system from your wife and family during those times? Because I know for some of our viewers, family is the biggest struggle. You go to work and you come home, and then it's like a whole nother set of things that you have to deal with, and especially for you being on the road for periods of time, for weeks at a time, like every other week or every weekend and so forth. How did that affect your home life, and how has that come to change now in your sobriety?
The alcohol is something that Crystal knew I struggled with it, and she was really, she's always been behind me through the worst of the worst. She's always had my back, and I'm super thankful for it. I know it hasn't been easy for her. She's kind of understood what I've had to deal with through her own struggles, which, she's done an amazing job on herself. And, my son, our oldest son, was still pretty young when I was drinking. She was deployed for a year, and so I raised him for from about 6 months to a year and a half on my own with the help of my mom on and off. But the drinking at the time didn't really affect my ability to be a parent, because I had to do that. Responsibility and things helped me mature. But when she got home and I started working, and the stress of the job and just not necessarily being happy internally, and having to reacclimate to a normal family lifestyle was a lot. And especially the last couple weeks or couple months that I was really out there drinking, it became too much. It became really hard on her. And it was something that I knew that if I kept going down that road, I was going to lose my kid. I was going to lose my wife. I was going to lose the music. I was going to lose it all, man. And possibly end up dead, because I was very, very close to that point. And Crystal stayed with me through it and gave me the chance and the opportunity to get better. And obviously I did it for myself. You have to, if you're going to get sober, you have to do it for yourself first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
you gotta want it. You gotta want it. Yeah.
Yep. I've over the years, I admitted that I had a problem with alcohol and drugs back in 2007, 2008. And I always got sober for my mom or this, that, and the other. And it was these last times that I've decided to be done, I had to do it for myself.
Right. And
it's what worked, So I'm glad that she gave me the opportunity to get better, and I didn't want to let her down. And I sure as heck didn't want Robbie, my kid, our oldest, to grow up with a father like that, or possibly lose me. So.
Right. That's awesome, dude. Yeah. I know at least in my active addiction, when we were indie based, when you and I were both there, that we shared a common friend in Jose, who unfortunately lost his life to addiction. And man, I have to say, for as long as I was in active addiction and as long as I was in indie, that to see the amount of turnaround that one person's life, the amount of changes that it brought about, not only in the scene, but in the music, but just the love that he had as an individual, because he was a tremendous individual, man. He was just high in spirit, high in life. And I know out of that, for the family's funeral expenses, you guys created Artists Against Addiction, and why don't you talk to me a little bit about that? Tell me a little bit about Jose, and just kind of the relationship you had there, and how his passing affected you, your music, and how you feel that it affected the scene in Indy.
Well, what was ironic is Jose and I met before I had gotten sober, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so at first, you know, Jose didn't necessarily care for me because I was a drunk asshole.
Right.
And I didn't even like myself, so I couldn't really expect anyone else to. I think people tolerated me enough because there was glimmers of like who I was that people saw.
Right.
You know, and I think that's what they kind of held on to. But, you know, it wasn't really until I quit drinking that, you know, Jose and I became closer. Because, you know, we talked about our struggles with different things and made amends and of stuff that, you know, we both had said. And, like, for the last couple of months, you know, he would come up to me and be like, man, I respect you so much. Like, I'm so proud of you and what you're doing. And it really brought him and I closer together. And, you know, he stopped drinking and started to settle down himself. And I mean, that's the tricky thing about addiction, man. You just never know. Like, you know, it's like you just got to live in the moment, being like you were saying, be in the present, and take it one day at a time. You know, because you just never know. And like, I believe he had about 2 years clean, and then one night, same situation as myself. You know, ended up having a relapse and didn't make it. And it, like, it sucked, man. I mean, he was such a bright light in our scene, in our community, and was responsible for giving it a whole new level of growth. Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. He was always there for people. He was always supportive, and like he believed in all of us. And like I know he believed in me, you know. And there was times where I'd be down myself, feeling like crap, and I'd go to a show, and he'd be like, "Oh, dude, I can't wait for your set," blah blah blah, and I'd see him front and center, like, I know that feeling. You know, So you know, after his passing, Duncan and I met. And I were like sitting there, and we just started talking about, you know, different ideas, what we could do to help, and we came up with this Artists Against Addiction idea. And we contacted a couple artists, friends that knew him, and just kind of started reaching out to people and be like, hey, you know, this is this idea we have, would you be down to donate a track to it? And so we decided to do that, and got like 27 tunes or something, different bands and producers, I mean, from all across the country. We had some, you know, major national acts like Zebulon and Connie, and Connie Experience, and our buddy Pleasure, guys that are just incredible artists that have been affected or felt passionate about the project and just the concept and idea. And have been affected from addiction, or new people that have struggled with it. And so what we did was we put that together, and we put it up on all the distributors, and all the money we raised went to a national organization called Shatterproof. What they do is they take their funding and the money they receive and use it to pass bills and lobby for you know, different addiction-based ideas, such as like better funding for treatment facilities and more outreach programs, materials for meetings, stuff like that. More funding for, you know, addiction research, and also they bring events to different cities to promote, you know, raise awareness about addiction. And then we also had a couple of the artists that contributed come and do a show at the Mousetrap with Indie Mojo. Ramsey helped with some of the planning of the actual album, got some artists involved for us, and also put together an amazing event to you know, memorialize Jose. And then all the proceeds that we got there went to his family. Right. So. And I think that was. I remember that specifically, and just how great of not only of a concept that it was, but how great of a success that was.
for one person, and not only not for one person, but for everybody who had lost him and who was involved, has been involved with addiction and in addiction. And you're exactly right. I mean, you just never know. I mean, one minute he was there and the next minute he was gone, and it left a huge hole, I think, in a lot of people, as as addiction does. We here at Ravers for Recovery, I mean, we're excited to, start that up with you again, and hopefully we can, keep that dream alive with the Artist Against Addiction and start doing some more tracks and stuff. So I do look forward to that.
Yeah.
On a happier note here, let's get back to this Coke Lot thing, and more importantly, the music. The music. The first time I ever met you, first time I ever saw you, the first song I ever heard from you was Wonderwall, and you had to have been 20 something. I mean, we were in the middle of the Coke Lot. We were in the middle of a Coke Lot. I mean, the only way I found it was by the bass. But describe to me where you've seen the music go, the inspiration that you've seen, good and bad. Like,
I mean, I think there's not too many negative things, I would say. I think a lot of it has been positive. I mean, it's definitely evolved, and with that comes more people, more ideas, and of course you have different things that you can take away from it. I mean, most of the negativity, whether it's groups or people or whatever, it doesn't seem to last long, because I feel like the overall idea and purpose of it is one of like positivity and love, and I think just from our group and what we're doing here in Indy and what I've seen in other cities, playing other cities, I feel like the intention is definitely coming from the right place.
mm-hmm.
I mean, when I got into this, it was 15 years ago. Like, I've been listening to electronic music forever.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like what was once this obscure genre or this obscure underground style, like around 2009, 2010 became
just
like
boom.
Popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a period. I remember it was just house and house techno. Like there was no EDM, there was no dubstep, there was no mashup. I mean, it was East Coast West Coast battles and just two turntables and some vinyl. And then there, like, after 2003, there was just kind of this dry period, and then all of a sudden, boom, like it came back. And and I think seeing you for the first time and a couple other of the local DJs there in Indy really showed me that the music wasn't dead, that if anything, it had grown into some kind of monster that it's turned into today. But what I'm noticing now today is, like, back then it was, these designer highs and drugs, and how high and how in, love could you be with anyone and everyone in the club, to getting back to more of the music, to like it's actually becoming more of the music type about the music.
I think a lot of it too is the fact that a lot of us have lost people, like,
mm-hmm. Too many.
Every other day or whatever, like at least once or twice a week, I'm seeing somebody else passing away.
Right.
And it's the saddest part is the fact that, like, what used to be, I mean, I would never advocate drug use, right? But you're going to do what you're going to do. I'm not going to tell you one way or another, but I feel like the scene has become a place to where if you do have a problem, people are going to support it. They respect it. They're
mm-hmm.
there for it. And unfortunately, it's come from a lot of great losses.
Right.
And some of these losses are people that didn't even know what they were getting. Getting drugs laced with fentanyl and stuff. I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah, well, with the advent of the synthetics and stuff like that, I think that really changed the ball game, because now you're getting something called Molly, and it really wasn't Molly. It's a research chemical from China, or you're getting, like you said, the fentanyl and stuff, and there are these kids that just, were not seasoned. Not that that's a thing, you know, but you know, they weren't aware of what they were doing or even who they were getting it from. I mean, it's Russian roulette. It really is. I mean, there are no
exactly.
guarantees. There are no guarantees. So,
It's so true, man, and I've been saying that all the time. Like, that's one thing I've always have compared it to is Russian roulette, man. You're always taking a risk, you
yep.
know, and um, you've got certain groups now that go to festivals and they have test kits and things like that, and
Mm-hmm.
people are on the fence about it. But it's like, people are going to do drugs no matter what,
Right.
you know, and I think it's part of our duty, or at least I feel like it's part of mine, to make people feel comfortable not doing it, and also making it okay for people to admit that they have a problem and that they can come to me or like
Mm-hmm.
other friends to say that. And I mean, to not feel out of place or judged or whatever, for doing so.
Right. I think that's really the biggest thing that you just touched on is just being able to talk to somebody. You know,
Yeah.
you know, not necessarily getting yourself into a rehab or a treatment program or anything, which is, you know, yes, the ultimate goal, and you probably should if you have that kind of a problem and whatnot. You know, you can't force someone to go.
Man, I've been to meetings. I've been to AA meetings, NA meetings, and like I don't necessarily go as much as I should now.
Mm-hmm.
But the big book, having read that, worked the steps and everything else, has seriously like been ingrained in the back of my mind, and
Right.
it's helped me tremendously, even from day-to-day things. And
Mm-hmm.
I think those things are not only good if you're struggling with addiction, but I think if you're not, or you're struggling with depression or
Right.
certain mental health issues,
The isolation.
Those underlying issues that we use drugs to self-medicate on, it's good to like have certain principles or certain things, like taking an inventory, working through resentments and stuff like that. I mean, dude, that's a healthy thought process, even if you aren't struggling with addiction.
Right. Yeah, we had a podcast with Abhishek Doba last night, and one of the things that stood out for me, he was saying, is leveraging the knowledge. You know, is taking that knowledge that you have, be it NAAA or SMART or any of the other programs that are out there, and leveraging that knowledge. You know, admitting you have a problem, seeking out help, finding counsel, you know, repairing damages, you know, making your amends, and then but moving forward one day at a time. You know, changing the groups, the people, the places, and the play things where you're at. You know, because. And that's another question I wanted to get to is, in your sobriety, one, how has your music changed in your production? And two, going back into a minefield of temptation, how do you handle that? I know you spoke about you're surrounded by people who are with you and stuff, who support your sobriety and stuff like that. But going into clubs and going to shows and stuff, what is it that you see now that is different than from 15 years ago?
I think people are more aware, and they recognize that addiction is an issue, and that, you know, I think they've become more open-minded, more receptive. It's not such a weird taboo subject. You know, people didn't want to talk about it. And it's kind of hit so hard that they don't have a choice anymore. It's part of what we all deal with.
Exactly.
And I think that's a good thing. I think that's awesome. I also think, for me personally, not having, I mean, like, the drugs and booze especially, it's made it a lot easier for me to creatively focus, and I think it's helped me open my mind and just be more original and kind of like find my own sound. And it's easier to write because my mind's not always like recovering from a bender or from like the night before or whatever. Like, I can wake up every day and come home every night and be able to sit down and write if I want to, you know, and I'm not trying to fight a hangover or withdrawals, you know?
Right.
So I think overall, I mean, it was the best decision I could have made for my music was quitting all that stuff and getting away from it, because it just would have destroyed me.
Right.
I was not productive, and even if I felt like, I was getting inspiration, it wouldn't last long, or, it would feed into so many other issues that would hinder that, creativity. At first it was a little weird performing live because, like, the booze and the drugs was like my social lubricant to feel comfortable. But once I fought through that and all the mental stuff and got comfortable, and it's like now, I never would have thought, like, playing a place like the Egyptian Room, right, in front of a couple thousand kids, being completely sober, like, it would have been foreign to me a couple years ago, or when we first met. It totally, like, I was nervous to play in front of 40 people.
Right.
And I think
I do slightly remember that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I do remember the nerves, because you were so new at the time, and you came on the scene, in a big way, So so man, I'm happy you're sober, and I'm happy you're still producing. What do you have new that's coming out? What's on your future agenda right now?
Well, I just recently dropped an EP last month that hit number 17 last I'd seen. It hit number 17 on the Beatport Top 100 bass charts.
Nice, dude.
Which is
nice.
Surreal. I've got a single coming out next week on the Colorblind compilation. Some friends from the Midwest are starting their thing. And then I've got another single lined up on a UK outlet, and then I'm finishing up another EP. So it's like, that kind of productivity and creative flow would not be possible if I was still drinking, getting messed up the way I used to.
Right.
I'm thankful. And, like, honestly, a lot of people are weird about religion or spirituality or whatever, but, like, I have a relationship with a higher power of my understanding that has truly made it all possible. Because if it were me doing it by myself, there'd be no way.
There really isn't. There really isn't.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer, and I've said this a long time, even while in active addiction and whatnot, you cannot be successful and be high.
No.
You just can't.
No.
You might be able to sustain it 9 out of 10, but that 10th time is always going to bite you in the ass, and it always seems to bite you in the ass in a way that you never expect, and it always ends up being worse than what you always thought it would be.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So, well, man, we're kind of drawing on time here, but any last words you want to throw out to your viewers, your listeners, to our viewers? Just anything that you want to pass on to the younger generation that listens to the EDM scene and the EDM music and festivals? Any words of wisdom?
Well, I want to say I'm proud of you, Eric. What you're doing and how far you've come. So,
Thank you.
Dude, it's amazing to sit here and have these conversations and just see where you're at, dude. I'm so proud of you. I want to thank everybody that's, watched this, and anyone that's ever supported my music from the very beginning to today. It's something that keeps me going and just, continues to drive me forward. And I think to anyone that is getting into this scene or even just struggling with addiction, you don't need the drugs to have a good time. You don't need to have the booze, to have a good time. It's moderation, but if you have a problem, it's okay to admit that you have a problem. And there's people out there that are doing this and they've struggled with it too, and they continue to do this and be sober, and they don't use or drink, so it's possible to do this and not be on something,
right?
And just continue to believe in yourself and your dreams and push forward. Surround yourself with people that are going to make that are going to help you be better and want to see you be better, whether it's career-wise or just personally, spiritually, mentally, whatever. Surround yourself with people that care about you.
Right on, man. That's really awesome, dude. Well, hey, man, I'm going to sign off here. You hold tight. I'm going to talk to you here in a second after I shut this thing down. But again, we're talking with a.k.a. Indigo Child, Rob Siesmasko. Get that right? All right. I'm going to get you that hat, and maybe you can do maybe like a 3-track thing for our webpage at raversforrecovery.org. That would be awesome, dude. I really do look forward to collaborating with you, man. It's been a personal pleasure of mine to know you, to get to know you, for having known you. I miss you. I really do. I can't wait to see your set. I miss your music. I look forward to getting back there sometime soon, if not getting you out here. So, again, this has been Ravers for Recovery. I'm Eric Miller. Troy's gone tonight, so we'll be back on Friday night. Thank you all for watching. Bye. See you, Rob.